If there's two things that absolutely shaped, defined, and dominated the 5th console generation, it'd have to be JRPGs and survival horror games. Being tied together by pushing the envelope in favor of a more adult flavor, accomplished through utilizing grim edgy settings, human-sized characters, and relatable writing.
Oh, Jill, this house is dangerous. There are terrible demons. Ouch!
What I'm about to say now might shock you.
But these two genres share a fuck of a whole lot more than simply some circumstantial similarities brought on by the times. I mean, both use cinematic angles punctuated by pre-rendered backgrounds, both often had a story-heavy Hollywood-like focus, both had puzzles to varying degrees, and basically, what I'm trying to say here is that if you take the Shinra Manor section from Final Fantasy VII and cut out the random encounters, you're basically left with a simplified version of RE1. And that's without mentioning the fact that Resident Evil's older brother, an NES game called Sweet Home, actually quite legitimately was Resident Evil 1 or Clock Tower by way of Dragon Quest. So all in all, I'd say that it's no surprise that an engine originally meant for JRPGs would become mostly known on the low-key for its crazy, inventive, mind-fucking, and sometimes traditional survival horror games. Really, many of the now considered classics aren't even RPGs at all. Well, except for Off, but that game is a work of fucking art and deserves its own video. But yeah, RPG Maker horror games quickly rose to fame through YouTube Let's Plays during the early 2010s, along with a shit ton of other indie horror games slowly shaping the horror trends we see now today. Actually, on a bit of an embarrassing, cringeworthy footnote, 2012 PewDiePie proved to be pretty influential to me as well. I mean, I was doing YouTube before, making all manner of silly songs, skits and vlogs with Artemis, but it wasn't until the combined forces of cringe, that was me getting into Minecraft and finding channels like the Yogscast making comedically fueled mod spotlight videos, and Felix PewDiePie Shellberg himself feeding into my just now discovered interest in all things horror after me and Artemis had just made this, and somehow scaring ourselves to shit doing so, that I opened my eyes to the idea of using video games as a force of creativity rather than just being something on the side for entertainment purposes only, leading to some amazing Let's Plays.
Leon! Hey! Hey, Leon!
What's up, bitch?
It was then that I also realized that pretty much all of my influence in regard to what I liked aesthetically, the types of people that I gravitated to, and the genres of music what I liked stemmed from video games. We even tried making one of our own, in RPG Maker, involving war and Nazis and a running gag where the German soldiers situated in the desert would say, "Mein Kampf, it is hot!" in reference to the weather. And at the center of it all stood a game called Ohlone, popularized by PewDiePie's seminal masterpiece of the era, It's Raping Time. Yeah, well, at least this content developed over time. In any case, this game was part of my introduction to a lot of things, and a fittingly shitty and cringeworthy bookmark on the end of my mid-teens. And yeah, this game isn't great, not gonna lie. Standard assets, text not appearing, horrible writing, barely any music, bad puzzles, and trial and error gameplay fit to make you say, though the titular Ione himself is quite the, memorable design, so to say, and has taken up his rightfully earned spot between the likes of Slender Man and Jack the Rapist, or whatever his name was, as complete and utter internet garbo that I enjoy for some ungodly reason. But that's where shit more or less started in a way, and after which things got a lot more interesting. Happy birthday! Here's some cake, presents, and a healthy dose of holy fucking shit, oh my god, my parents just died. And so you, Shiori Kanzaki, grows up all alone in her lonely little house. Or that is until some red text appears causing a picture to fall from her grandfather clock, and on that picture is Shiori herself, her parents, and a mysterious man with a date and location scribbled down next to him. And so, filled with angst, we head on over during the summer vacay to find out that said location was an old museum occupied by its strange eccentric owner and situated in a strange eccentric town. And it was here that I noticed a number of things. Holy shit, I look adorable. Oh wow, this cute-ass music. And oh no, this clearly translated Japanese writing, but hey, at least there's some proper survival horror gameplay to make up for it. Thing is that while there isn't any combat per se, you only get chased around on occasion, the main bulk of the Forest of the Drizzling Rain takes place within the museum, and also Forston Cave, where you do some exploration, find some items, use those items elsewhere, progress. Now, the puzzles in question aren't exactly brainbusters, but it is one of those games that requires you to examine literally everything, preferably more than once, because RPG Maker works via an event trigger system, so it's better to have your all-caps warnings at the ready. Not really the type of game to center itself around gameplay though, like what is there is definitely serviceable, but it's more so about the thick husky layers of rainy atmosphere, freaky characters, and proper spooky vibes. Oh no! Trust me, Daddy, the writing here is actually pretty good underneath all of the fuck. The monologues describing the moist air in the attic, for instance, work very well to set the tone, and the more straightforward explanatory stuff does the job just fine too. It's just that the dialogue has a bit of extra flavor to it, as it were, which isn't something this genre is estranged to after all, so it fits. And hey, these characters sure as fuck are pretty cool at least. There's the titular manager, who's a goth mute who walks around at night carrying a fake sword and can only speak to you using notes. Then there's this annoying little brat who keeps breaking into places, sneaking around and getting into trouble, and Mr. Policeman, who seems to be the only sane person in town for as far as you know, and is just as occupied with keeping these idiots out of trouble as you are. Its scope may be small, being only 1 or 2 hours long, but it still offers enough weird shit like that to make it feel like a type of tiny sweary game in a way. You know, the guy who made Deadly Premonition and D4. The wonky writing certainly helps in that aspect, as it creates this constant sense of jokey lightheartedness around each and every conversation. The anime portraits exemplify this perfectly, always setting the mood, like here, where we see Shiori pull this face after reading about a spooky, scary, child-eating monster that comes out when it rains. It's good, it's cute, bellissimo. And the derpy walk cycles are also top dog. Anyway, as the game progresses, the story becomes creepier and creepier, with stuff like the monster I just mentioned slowly cluing you in on this troubled little town. I kinda wanna talk about it in depth because of the strong adult themes, which are really cool as they massively caught me off guard with how totes adorbs most of the game is, but I'd rather leave you to find that shit out on your own. Though, let's just say that all of the townsfolk are appropriately Twin Peaksy about the local history books and that which lies in the forest. It's pretty eerie for what it is, and the audio is by far the best part of how it introduces these elements. Okay, well, that's probably not as harrowing without the build-up or context, but it's good shit nonetheless.
It's gamer good.
4chan!
A very spooky place indeed. I mean, somewhere in between the kiddie porn back in the early days and the rampant gore and Nazism, it may not necessarily seem like a website one would voluntarily go to unless degenerate. But given a bit of incentive and heaps upon heaps of autism, some truly creative things can come out of it. Like the post your SoundCloud threads on Moo, or people getting fashionable on FA, the ongoing real-life soap series that is Paul versus Shaya's little shitso, and the occasionally funny story and or creepypasta. One of which was a tale about the Skinwalker, involving a group of college students going out on a camping trip in the woods. Once there though, the fog kept getting thicker, the audio more unruly, and the darkness even darker. And then our game begins, aptly titled Skinwalker. It is a game based on said creepypasta with some creative liberties taken here and there. Like a dashing cast of characters, proper amounts of teenage asshole banter, and some really good pacing, writing, and even planning. Well, I mean, it's camp as all hell, but out of all the games covered in this video, this is easily the scariest one to me. See, I'm subtle to jump scares, especially when there's a ton of tense buildup, and sadly for me, that's this entire game's MO. Thing is that as our wee scuttlebutts start chilling in tents, shit starts to get a little bit hairy as this body-snatching, illusion-creating, whatever the fuck its deal is monster shows up. I'd like to liken him to the Thing in that anyone can end up being it. And so, being stuck in a tent, or exploring a forest, or being trapped in a log cabin ends up being scary as all dick. Though it's not a very game-heavy game, mind you. You walk around a bit in between event triggers and forward some text, but you don't really do much outside that. There aren't any puzzles or whatever, it's just a short story, and what a story it is. Much like the Forest of the Drizzling Rain, it relies a lot on Corpse Party black screens, only there they were short and simple and served only to punctuate some things that couldn't be animated. Here though, they were a full fucking feature. The writing, audio design, and proposed visuals get balls deep into your skull. Like, there's this one section where they're walking around through the woods on their way to the cabin, but Joe has a feeling that someone is watching them. He hears a droning sound and starts looking around, panicking. He did a head count, or more accurately, a silhouette count. Me, Celeste still holding my hand, Darren in the lead, Michael to the left. Who the heck was that guy besides Michael? My grip on Celeste's hands tightened as I quickened my pace. I thought about shouting out, but was worried. If I did, maybe the Thing would turn around and jump scare Michael or something. I didn't know what to do. I ran my fingers along my knife I brought from camp. Then the cabin appeared, out of nowhere. The mist was starting to disintegrate around us. It was easier to make out who everyone was now. I looked at the Thing next to Michael. She looked just like Celeste. The Thing whose hand I was holding leaned in front of me. It wasn't Celeste. Ooh! Yeah, okay. That jump scare was kind of dumb, but still, it's a neat little game with a couple of cool moments like that. Give it a try if you think you might dig. Now, the two games I just covered weren't very well known at all, which is, why I did it, but there are also some that have risen to fame, at the very least on Tumblr blogs, that are totes deserving of a good bump slap just as well. First off, Matt Father, a game that's pretty fucking massive because of the billions of LPs that exist of it out there. It's about a little girl whose dad is a bit mad, working in his laboratory all day, chopping up corpses and fucking bitches. Not mega scary per se with the tenseness or the jump scares, though you do need to deal with some of Daddy's failed experiments, but more so on the psychological spectrum with its weird fucked up story. Just imagine what it must be like growing up with a maid-banging Joseph Mengele around the house, and you might get a decent idea of what this game tries to convey. Also, there's this whole freaky subplot involving the salesman, which ties into another game made by the same people called Misawa, which used to be all over the place memeing it up for quite a while. But Matt Father anyway gives you a fucking chainsaw, so it's pretty good, and it has emotions in it too. Then there's The Crooked Man, a manly game about manly men that are crooked, and not about girly girls or teenagers or teenage girls for once. You're a chubby-ass dude who's just fetched himself a fancy new apartment, only then haunted, and his mom is also terminally ill, and his past is kinda shitty, and so he goes on an epic quest to abandoned places to do some introspection. All the while, the Crooked Man is crooked. It's alright. It was mainly popular because of PewDiePie, but it certainly has its fair share of memorable moments. And while it might look kinda derpy, its story is rather intriguing and kinda Silent Hill-ish in a way. And finally...
Can I get a drum roll, please? This boy needs a drum roll, please.
Easily the most famous one of all... Ebe. often described as DeviantArt the game.
What the hell are these proportions and designs?
It is a tale about a girl child named Eve who goes to this museum with her parents. However, shit turns out to be well fucked and a fully functional, fully playable, actually mechanically sound but still kinda short survival horror game happens. Yep, the reason this one's as popular as it is, well, besides the oodles of OTPing going on, is that this is by far the most proper game out of everything I've covered. I mean, you have like an actual health system that works via roses what you carry, which can only be replenished at vases scattered around the game once per vase, and legit puzzles with memorable events, themes, and gameplay variety. Not a particularly brutal game, though far more challenging than the others due to the inclusion of health alone. See, Eep uses environmental jump scares that often do a wee bit of damage as well. This can feel a tad unfair, but it makes the actual jump scares themselves so much more intimidating than they would have been on their own. Like, even doing as much as examining an object at the wrong time could lead to some damage being taken, and per extension, your death. Luckily, you're able to save as much as you want, and the save stations are dispersed graciously. So there's no going down Frustrate Lane having to redo massive chunks of gameplay. Oddly enough, I'd say that the story isn't actually Eve's strongest point, as, for once, this RPG Maker game excels in the gameplay department because of its cleverly built puzzles and riddles worthy of Silent Hill itself. Like this one, where you interact between two versions of a room through painting-based riddles with the puzzles in one bringing forth solutions in the other. Or how about the puzzle similar to the infamous Noose puzzle from Silent Hill 2, only here it involves lady paintings trying to rat each other out through cryptic banter. It's really cool. Though perhaps not entirely my cup of tea, but what the fuck do I know, right? It's a very fast game as well. There isn't too much in the way of lengthy dialogue, and the puzzles are often confined to smaller spaces, both of which move the unlocking of progression along at a very satisfying pace. Enter a room, get introduced to an obstacle, veer off to the room next to it, get a clue, get jump scared, do a quick puzzle while still on edge, find the solution, head back one door over, solved. You know, stuff like that. Topping everything off really well though is the museum itself and how it influences the monster designs and jump scares. Featuring fashionable mannequins, scrawling paintings, and various types of art pieces that can go ham in a number of ways. While walking around the pastel-covered, dimly lit museum, something sprung to mind. Honestly, that music could have very well been stolen from a Resident Evil game now that I think about it, but my point still stands. This is Goth Resident Evil. From the awkwardly written banter buddies, the oppressive strangeness, one-off set pieces, and the memorable moments and rooms, to the abstract notes, backtracky puzzles, and the remembering of passcodes and other stuff made to prove my flimsy point. I'm not trying to oversell the game, don't get me wrong, but if you happen to try at least one of these games, then I'd say you'd be best off picking this one. Before we move on to the final segment of this video, I'd like to bring up two honorable mentions as it were, being that these are two games that I've already covered extensively in the past. The first is a game called Tout, a German Silent Hill fan game gone translated, gone wild, that I discussed in my Silent Hill fan games video. It's not strictly a fan game per se though, as I said, gone wild. It has the foggy mist, the schools, the police ladies, and even the straight up bear from Silent Hill 2, but every once in a while it'll flop out its tits of questionable age and do its own little thing. I'd go into it more, but if you're interested, there's a video elsewhere on my channel where I already do just that. And the second game, also of German descent, is called Schuld, which isn't even really so much of a horror game as it is just a weird mindfuck short story. So short, in fact, that saying any more than I did back in 2014 would only ruin it, so check out my original review if you're interested. Something else that was also featured heavily on my channel back in the day, a whopping 2 whole episodes of heavily, was a game called Yume Nikki, or rather the fan games that spawned from it. And I gotta admit, not the best idea I ever had, though a neat learning experience nonetheless. At the very least, I certainly loved the weird ethereal atmosphere I had going on, established through janky animations, a custom-made soundtrack, and artsy-fartsy title cards and aesthetical things that, believe it or not, actually spawned from a dream that I had. Which was as fitting as a snuck fuck as well, considering that the entire point of Yume Nikki and its ilk was the exploration of dreams. Released in the long-forgotten era of 2004 by a Japanese boy man person called Kikiyama, Yume Nikki was a game where you played as a little girl stuck in her shitty apartment, being left with a total of 3 options: play video game, commit suicide, or go to bed. And once bedded, you enter the realm of dreams filled to the brim with a bunch of doors all leading to their own unique worlds. But here's the catch. Each of these worlds is like a hazy plot thread on its own, constantly going deeper and deeper, entering realm after realm as the player gets completely sucked in, forever trapped in dreamland until rudely awakened. Not so much a game as it was an atmospheric piece, this was what the seminal Yume Nikki was all about. And as such, there isn't really anything quite like it, truly a unique beast all on its own. Well, it is often compared to LSD Dream Simulator, and while I can't see why, I'd argue that that'll only hurt it in the long run. What I mean is that LSD feels kinda randomly generated in a way. The textures look like they're just kinda spread all over the place willy-nilly with nothing but the empty foggy void to accompany them. There's fuck all to do is what I'm trying to get at here, and Yume Nikki isn't like that. Yume Nikki felt deliberate, as if everything was meant to be seen and therefore handcrafted as a result, making for an experience that's never boring. Oh, and what I said about there not being anything like it was a complete fucking lie. Yep, fake news. Because of it being as special as it is, it triggered mass inspo all around the world. And so the Yume Nikki Wiki was born, hosting a plethora of fan games made by people essentially copying Yume Nikki's verbatim, but filling up its spaces with dreams, kinks, musings, and influence of their very own. A real-life, explorable database of dreams, as it were. One might feature a car crash from a viewpoint of a loner dad, another might have you explore a pastel town as a weird fleshy globule. Another might take you on a trip around the old Duke Nukem 3D engine. It's pretty fucking great. If any of this looks at all interesting to you, then I'd highly recommend doing what I did back in 2014 and just pick a couple of random ones from the wiki, wait until badly sleep deprived, and go on the fucking trip of a lifetime. For shirt quality's sake though, I'd personally recommend the original first, but goddamn, you'll be in for one hell of a time either way. And yeah, that's it. Sorry if this video was a bit on the longer side, but it's something that I've been wanting to cover for ages, and I'd figured I'd do the subject some proper justice. Though, of course, some casualties did happen, like my neglect of Desert Nightmare, Mermaid Swamp, The Witch's House, The Mirror Lied, It Moves, Corpse Party, though that one's kind of made pointless by the PSP remake, Miserere, and probably many, many, many others. Anyway, I'm dead now, and this took forever to make. Goodbye.